All right, so today is Ask Shawn. All right, so we're going to ask Shawn some questions. So, Shawn, you know physics, you know math, right? You know a lot of sciences, right? Most people are not disciplined enough to know sciences. And also, most people are not like Rain Man, where they can learn it, right? Most people have to study and they never really get good at it, right? But you're different. Your mind is different. And so I want to ask you, like, what are things in this world, as you go around, you see the newspaper, you see people talking, what is stuff that's like not true that most people believe? Just boom, 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 and why? Yeah.
Most people
Talk right into it.
when it comes to physics, a lot of people make common mistakes like double dipping, which is where a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I have a car. It has an alternator on the engine that's generating electricity. That charges the battery. Once my battery's charged, I can use that extra power coming from the alternator and use that to charge my cell phone or anything else." They don't understand thermodynamics, which is basically you take an energy source like chemical energy, convert it into something else, and you get less, always. There's three laws. The first law is you can never get more. The second law is the best you can get is the same. And the third law is you can't get the same. So it's always less, always. And a lot of people, they'll have inventions or ideas, and almost all the new ideas, they always violate some law of thermodynamics. And the way you can identify whether or not the system will work is to think about it that way. Is energy being converted somewhere? Or if somebody claims to get a free piece out of here, like a saltwater engine, right? You've seen that. I mean, maybe you haven't. Where they like add salt, they take seawater and they use that with electrolysis and it generates electricity, right? But every time you think you're getting something for free out of it, there's a cost somewhere. That salt solution is being screwed with. Or like a battery. You know, you have two dissimilar metals in an electrolyte, like acid, and you think you could just keep running it forever. There's something in that system that must wear down. Because when you look at the real world, things never go exponential. They never, accumulate energy more and more and more. If that was happening, it would happen at a greater scale everywhere else. And so the fact that you don't see that, the fact that things tend to decay and tend to lose power, tells you that something must be happening. In the case of the battery, the electrodes dissolve. The metal dissolves. You have to take more metal and put it back in the battery to keep running it, right? And the electrolyte gets worn out, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is statistics. People really have a hard time understanding statistics. Statistics, if you can get one thing about them, they're not intuitive at all. All your instincts about statistics are wrong. You have to use math. Like even statisticians get the wrong answer when they guess about what a statistic would be, right? None of the methods are intuitive. You have to use math. And it's always surprising. You calculate, you're like, there's no way. That's true and that's true. Like how is that possible?
Can you give an example of that?
Let's see. An example of that is, let's say I have a die and I roll it, right? And I roll it and I get a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 6 and a 2 and a 5. I'm not getting a 1 for like 10 rolls. And they're like, well, a 1 must be coming up. It must be more likely because it's coming up. In reality, the odds are exactly the same because they're independent trials. People know that, but instinctively, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's so simple. But that happens everywhere else. You'll have people having that mindset, right? I like at a roulette wheel. People like, it's been black 3 times. It's gotta be white. It's gotta be like at least 1% more likely. It's 0% more likely. Another thing is like at a drive-thru. You're in the drive-thru at McDonald's. It takes 5 minutes on average to get through the drive-thru. This is called a geometric probability. You go through, it takes 5 minutes. You've been in the line for 5 minutes already. How long will it take to get through the drive-thru? The answer is still 5 minutes. The fact you've been waiting in the drive-thru for 5 minutes changes nothing. So that means all that time you spend in the drive-thru has actually just all been wasted in line. It does not increase your odds. It doesn't increase the expected time that you'll go through. And there's lots of statistics that work like that. All geometric probabilities work that way. And there are systems that are geometric, and people just don't know. And so they'll think, well, I've invested this. Surely, you know, like so if you're ever waiting in a line and it's taken too long, just know that all that time has been completely wasted. And you could just leave now, and it wouldn't change. It wouldn't change anything. So that's...
Question.
Is there any like physics or math that proves an existence of God, higher power, or a greater subconscious?
Repeat the question.
Is there any math that proves the existence of God or a higher subconscious? There is not. There is. So Isaac Newton, super genius. He invented classical physics as a way to explain how planetary bodies move. And then in order to solve that, he invented calculus to help him write the physics equations. This guy's very intelligent. And he spent about 10 years of his life trying to prove the existence of God. Back then, we didn't have logical positivism, so that was seen as a worthwhile endeavor. St. Augustine did it. Tons of intelligent people have done it. But it can't work because that idea is based on not being able to perceive it, right? There's a God here who can't be perceived materially. He has properties that aren't material. So you're never going to be able to use material science to prove that. Or any other thing, like is the oven on at home? I don't know.
Is the what at home?
Is the oven on at home? I don't know. I have no way. Well, the oven at my house.
The oven. Okay.
Yeah. Did I leave the oven on? I don't know. Right? Is there like a plane above us? There's no. If I have no way to observe any of it, there's nothing. There's no trick. You're never gonna like find some odd pattern within math that's gonna like prove this greater. It's only gonna prove stuff about math. So no. And a lot of people way smarter than me, way more experience, way more time have tried. No. What was your question?
I think David.
No, I was
Oh, he was trying to end the mic.
I see. I was just wondering if, because you were talking about geometric probabilities and just probability in general, and I was wondering if you could go into sort of I think people don't necessarily understand the connection between statistics and then how that jumps to machine learning. I'm not sure if that is like in your forte with statistics, but I think that's really interesting because machine learning right now is like exploding, AI and all.
So machine learning has a bunch of nodes that have weights. So machine learning is like if a computer wants to know whether or not that's a man in a hat, right? What it does is it has all these different features. It has a set of features. So it's like, okay, I know what a rectangle looks like. You know, what is the contrast of the picture? What is the rough shape of the picture? And those weights those nodes get certain weights and they're summed up together, right? So, okay, the shape of the head is like this. That gets a 0.6. You know, the contrast is pretty high. That gets a 0.2. The shape has these V's coming off. That's a 0.3. Therefore, that's a man in a hat. And then it says, did I get the right answer? And it looks at the set and it says, no, that's not a man in a hat. And it goes, oh, okay. And then it has a structured way of doing the feedback loops where it says, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to adjust this weight and lower this one and turn up this one. Okay, now I'm going to look at some more pictures of people in hats and other nonsense. Did I get it right? Oh, I didn't get it right. So it's just feedback loops that are constantly adjusting it. But there's no... And that's actually how your brain works. Your brain has neuron cells that have all these inputs going into it and then only one output. And that's what a neural net looks like. It gets all these inputs. It's like, okay, you know, are people mad at me right now? Well, I see most of the mouths or the flatness of the mouth. That's a feature. You know, the way the eyes are shaped is another feature. I'm summing that together. Okay, the answer is an output goes to my brain to say, no, don't turn on the adrenaline because nobody's mad at you, right? But that doesn't use statistics though.
Right.
Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Is it still just physics, or can I ask more like brain psychology?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, good. So I'll keep it short. Like, what's your favorite cognitive bias, and what's your solution? Not solution, but more like how do you manage that bias? Because I know there's tons of biases. We can't really overcome them, but how do you, like, deal with them, really?
I like self bias, because a lot of people have self bias. So like kids think that everybody else thinks like them, and they have the same values. And I thought that even when I wasn't a kid, even when I was an adult, I thought that. And so a big part of learning to read other people was figuring out that actually people don't have the same values. They don't even think like me. They think, very differently. They have a whole different world of experience, And so once I learned that, it was easier to pay attention to faces, because I'm like, because I just assumed, this guy thinks like I do. If I say this, he'll know what I mean. He probably likes math. What guy doesn't like math? Come on. Things like that, right? So I like self-bias, because everybody, has it, and it's just interesting.
Explain more about how to overcome self-bias.
Oh, I mean, once you know it's not real, once you know, like, you just talk to people, and you're like, man, this guy is really different, right? You'll ask him his take on something, and you're like, wow. Because at first you just think they're dumb. Because you perceive something, and somebody else perceives something different, or they don't see what you see, and you're like, oh, they must be dumb because they don't see it. Because they think like me, but because they don't see it, that part of their brain must just be like so down here, right? Because they have the same experiences as me. How could they not? We went to Disney World when I was 7. How could they not know? They must have forgot because they're dumb, right? That's like the thought that you have. And that's like, wait, no, they didn't go to Disney World. No, they don't have that experience. And so you just realize, like, oh, wait, this is a totally different person. This is a person who doesn't like me at all. I can't assume much of anything about him. I don't know.
Well, what is like the big, like if you look at history, there's like things that repeat, trends that are wrong that kind of go a cycle again. What do you see? There's a tulip investment. There was the witchcraft, or I don't know if that's a good question. I don't know. I was thinking of something else actually. Let me think.
Is there any way to
There's bubbles,
prevent
yeah.
cycles in history constantly repeating, like the fall of civilizations, like the certain way things always go? And it's like no matter what we do, we're like, oh yeah, look at history. Let's not make the same mistakes. It's like we still do it. Is there any way to actually stop that?
I don't think so. I think the problems in societies are features. They're not bugs. They're part of what causes it to exist, right? Like, you can't have a whale that has like 4 legs and walks around and does whatever it wants. If it's a whale, it's got to have flippers. And if it's a whale, it can get stabbed really easily. Like humans, they're born, they thrive, and they die. And everything that humans build does that same thing. And so a government should function like an organism. It should be born and grow and then stagnate and then collapse. Why wouldn't it? Just like humans have cancer, and there's not a way to beat the cancer. Like, there's problems in society that just keep growing. They don't have outlets, and eventually you just have to like dump it. It's like an old car. It gets so many issues. Like, you could replace the entire car. It's just an old car. You just gotta at some point just throw it in the trash. That's okay. That's what I think. I don't know.
Okay, I got one that's out there.
Okay.
So, do you think by our lifetimes that magic and technology is going to be indistinguishable, in which that we have nanomachines in the air and that we have human brain interfaces that can interact with those nanomachines?
I don't think so, because our technology is already indistinguishable from magic to somebody from like the year 500. To see the things that we do and are able to move and express. I mean, it would be like magic. But by the time we get there, we'll be used to it. Like, cell phones are not magic to us. Cell phones aren't even like, in the 70s, this was a Star Trek device. Was the tricorder, Scotty, where's our location? That was cool. That was like future tech. But now it's boring. I think technology can't develop faster than you can adapt to it while it's happening. I just don't think, because a human has to make it. So a human can only make the technology at a certain speed. They can perceive the technology way faster. The second it comes out, oh wow, you can plug this into your brain. That's crazy, and they already get it.
Okay.
That's just a similar, like the way I can see that religion is not true. It's so simple, but I just kind of realized this one day. is every religion, their books and stories, they're all based on technology that exists right then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like there will be a flying horse, and there will be a giant, whatever, rat, and then as technology, there will be there was nuclear bombs. What was that religion? Dianetics, Scientology. Nuclear bombs destroyed the world many times over, but nobody said nobody. They try to take these vague things and turn them into things, but it's a futile attempt because it's very easy to say things. If you know what they are, you're not going to beat around the fucking bush. Right. You know what I mean? If you're going to get in a car with four wheels and drive around with a motor, you're going to say basically a car. You put it in gasoline, you drive around, this and that. But they never do that. Every religion is nice. It's nice. But the reason why you know God doesn't exist, the religions that I know of, is because they never come up with the new thing. They never say, in the future, we're going to split the atom. And scientists do that. Scientists sometimes a few hundred years early. But religions never do. Religions always go with the safe bet, And it's like that just means like so obvious that there's no foresight in religion. If there's no foresight, and they're trying to do foresight, right? They're saying they can't do it because they don't know. It's so simple.
What about the Book of Revelations?
The Book of Revelations is it's all it is a doomsday. Yeah. It was plenty of doomsday before that. It's all going to end. It's going to suck. And so it's easy. A broken clock is right twice a day. So if I say the stock market's going to go up, I'll be a genius someday. You know what I mean? And crypto is going to come back. Someday I'll be a genius. 100% probability. That's going to, almost 100%. It's going to happen at some point. But see, I'm not putting a date on it. That's the thing. That's the genius, is when you know when it's going to happen, basically, in what order. If you don't know, you just say some random thing, he's going to die. You're a fucking genius. He does die someday. But it doesn't mean you knew. You didn't know anything. It's a way of making yourself look like you knew. When you know something, you say it so clearly, right? But no one knows the future. We all don't know the future.
A popular topic is like a lot of people, even people that aren't interested in physics or math, a lot of people are still interested in cosmology, like astronomy. And so you guys have questions about that kind of stuff? Oh.
Yeah, so no bullshit. Like a lot of people get lost in the horoscope shit and they're like, oh yeah, I'm an Aquarius. That means I have these exact personality traits. Yet also there does seem to be this thing that happens where people who are born in certain times, certain seasons, certain years, we all have totally different personalities. Sometimes there are consistencies over time where you're like, wow, yeah, you tend to have these same kind of patterns. What's the real deal about that? Like, do the seasons, the cosmology actually affect us in a way, whether it be scientific or not, or is it all just mental bullshit?
It's all just mental bullshit, because the whole world is not in summer. There's summer on here and winter on here, right? So you being born in a certain season, there's not even a consistent season to reference. If you're born August 13th, like they'll tell you, oh, in August, if you're born in August, it's like this and this and this. Well, on other parts of the world, August is winter. So what are you talking about? Like, there's no physics that would change that. Also, the constellations in the night sky, they're named after old ancient gods, but that's not like, you wouldn't be able to point, if you were in ancient Rome, you wouldn't be able to say, look, there's the constellation Aquarius, and people would know that. They just wouldn't know. I believe it was, I could be wrong about this, I think it was around the year 1800. They wanted to take all the stars in the night sky and organize them so that they'd be easier to map and do whatever. And they said, okay, well, we're going to have 88 constellations. And those are constellations, and every star that's not in a constellation is just a random star, right? But they made those then. You know what I mean? Like the planets are named, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. They have nothing to do with gods because Rome, like the Roman Empire, considered those things significant. But those planets weren't named that until, the 1600s, right? Well, some of them were named earlier, but as they found them out later, like Uranus and Neptune, those were discovered in 1787, or I think one of them discovered in 1889 or something like that. Like these names are tacked onto things later And so you get the impression that they'll have significance, but because they were named later, you know they don't.
Okay, two things. There's planets. So the Big Bang, right? Big Bang, everything, condenses, all the planets condense down to one thing the size of a pea. Pressure's so great, it all blows up, and then the dust goes out. How does the dust, like they always say, the dust becomes a planet? Like, to me, that never made any fucking sense, because there's just a bunch of dust. I don't see any planets forming in my house. Like, how the fuck does dust become a planet?
So what happens is, after the Big Bang, things explode. Eventually, it cools down enough to where you can form particles. Those particles form atoms. One of the easiest atoms to form is hydrogen, because it just has one particle in there, right? So there's a bunch of hydrogen everywhere floating around in gas clouds. The laws of gravity say these hydrogens are floating and they attract each other and they touch. Now there's two of them. This has more gravity, so it pulls more particles. The more particles it pulls...
Even at that level?
Yes, even at that level. Yes. And even at that level, gravity is still like the weakest force by far. So you're right. The electromagnetic force is stronger. You have to wait for these clouds to cool down enough to where gravity becomes a dominant force. But you're correct, yeah. At the subatomic level, gravity is not even a factor. Like, nuclear forces are so much stronger. Yeah. But eventually, these particles coalesce, and the more size you get, the more mass you get, it warps space-time more, which pulls in more particles and more particles. And eventually those particles are touching, and they can't get any closer. So they get pushed into each other. And when that happens, the elements fuse together, and that creates an enormous explosion, right? That blasts everything apart. But then you still have so much more pressure that it pushes it back down and explodes. And that's happening, and that's what stars are. And they're constantly doing that. As they're pushing and exploding, they're forming heavier and heavier elements. So hydrogen forms into helium, and then heliums are collapsing together, form into carbon, and you form heavier and heavier elements, because when you fuse them, you get more energy out.
Which elements after carbon?
After carbon, you just get all, nitrogen, oxygen, you go all the way up to element 26, which is iron. When you fuse to make iron, you get almost the same amount of energy in the fusion that it took to push into it in the first place. So after that, you can't go any heavier than iron. And the star is becoming more and more like carbon. And then eventually the weight of it is so large that even the explosions can't pull it apart. And it pushes into it even further than that. And it creates a large gravity well. And it explodes into either a nova, or if it's really big, a supernova, or if it's super big, if it's smaller than that, it'll form just like a neutron star, like a super dense material. When a nova happens, or when a supernova happens, those atoms, it doesn't matter that it takes more energy to form them together, because they're just being exploded everywhere. So the irons fuse into heavier and heavier and heavier elements, all the way up to like uranium, which is 92. And then those things could get scattered everywhere, right? And they're flowing around, and those clouds start moving around other stars. Those clouds are in motion, so they're moving super fast, and they're around a star. If you're moving quickly enough, you don't fall into a gravity well. You'll actually spiral it forever. Like, those machines where you take the penny and you let it spiral down into the thing? If you can move the penny fast enough, it'll never fall. Because by the time the penny should have theoretically fallen to here, it's already moved around the circle, right? So it stays in orbit. And that's what these particles do. As they stay in orbit, they're still using their gravity to pull other particles to them. And that dust, which is now not hydrogen, it's iron and carbon, mostly carbon, forms together into larger and larger clumps. And those clumps form planets. And we have evidence in our solar system of a planet between Mars and Jupiter that tried to form together and didn't quite make it, and probably got hit by something else. And that's the asteroid belt. That's little pieces of dust that eventually the asteroid belt should...
You mean around Saturn? Or what do you mean asteroid belt?
No, the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter.
Oh.
The asteroid belt, that surrounds the inner planets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that could theoretically eventually form into a planet, but it would take a very, very long time, and they might even be moving too slow to do that now.
Okay, they say that they're finding some kind of life in the upper atmosphere. Some kind of small life, like really close to space. Do you think that Earth was seeded by a comet? So there was life somewhere, it exploded, and that life then just single cell organisms landed here, the right temperature. Is that where you think life came from?
I think life is super common because it's so easy to form. And when they talk about life, they're talking about, so you have organic compounds, which are just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Those hydrocarbons are organic compounds. Some of those organic compounds will interact with other compounds and create something. And some of them create a copy of themselves. And that's a replicating hydrocarbon. It's not alive, it's a chemical, right? But it's replicating. And they found self-replicating hydrocarbons all over the place. They found them on asteroids, all this other stuff. It's not life, but it's pretty close because you're an organic compound. You're mostly carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and you replicate in a more complicated way. But that's how things that replicate like living organisms just do it in a more sophisticated way. But there's a thin line between what's alive and what's not. Like we say viruses aren't alive, but viruses replicate and viruses target bacteria and viruses eat bacteria. And so they eat, they reproduce, they are attracted to certain hosts. Your body's like 90% old viruses that have, coalesced and gotten cancer and formed into something that's helpful to you. Not a virus can't really get cancer, but its code gets like corrupted and changed. So I think people would be surprised. I think there's life all over the place, but it would be mostly just like on Earth. There's us, but then there's like billions of other species that are like smaller, and there's tons of bacteria and like just kind of stuff you wouldn't even just like, that's barely alive. That's a dust mite. That's bacteria. I think you'd find bacteria all over the solar system.
Okay, a follow-up question. So, as far as I understand, if I'm wrong, that they found a vent bottom of the ocean, and next to that vent was shrimp.
Right.
But they were just like the shrimp on Earth, except for they were see-through. And they say that there's no way they could have evolved on the surface.
Right.
Those shrimp had to evolve in a different environment down there. And then they also found when they were looking at cave paintings, they found organisms in there that were, again, what I read is that they believe they evolved completely separately than anything on Earth, and that they look exactly the same. So my guess is that we always draw aliens as being weird, but it's all math, that they're going to look exactly like us. Basically.
That idea is called convergent evolution, which says that, the laws of physics are such that animals have to look a certain way. There's a reason animals are, like big herd animals, are four-legged. It's because you only need 4 legs to be stable. Having 6 legs adds complexity, adds problems. You just don't need it, and so they don't evolve it. And that's why all animals are 4-legged. It's not because they evolve from each other. Like, one common thing is that a lot of animals keep evolving into, like, crabs. A crab is a very good shape. It's a very good structure. It's a mouth. It's got armor here, and then it's got mobility laterally. That's very useful. A lot of animals will evolve into crabs, and they're not related to each other at all. Like, at all. You would think they'd be crabs, and we call them crabs, but they're actually completely different organisms. Their DNA is significantly different from this other one, even though physically and morphologically they look exactly the same. And that's the same thing with eyes. Like there's 4 different evolutionary lines for eyes, and
4 different.
Yeah, like
Literally 4 eyes.
There's 4, right. There's like arms and teeth have evolved, dozens of different ways. Eyes are pretty complicated, but there's still 4 different kinds of eyes. Like the eyes of a nautilus are completely different from ours. They obey the same laws of physics. They have to absorb light. There has to be a cup. It has to reflect onto a lens to bring in more light. But I think even the eye of an eagle is not the same eye that we have. It's an eye that functionally has become the same, but comes from a whole different design perspective, right?
I had a great question. I forgot.
Oh, sorry.
Is there a way to use math to instantly change our mental state?
No. Math is just like an idea that we made up. No way.
With the advent of the Industrial Revolution, and then it morphed into assembly lines, robotics, AI, things like that, I see that the strength of men, their primary characteristic was physical strength, and men were valued because of that characteristic. They were needed. Now I'm theorizing that as machines become more sophisticated, this innate trait that men have is seen as being deselected from evolution. Do you think that the average man is being deselected from evolution in favor of a new type of, some type of other characteristic of men that is going to become more prominent, such as like the image of the
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, like the thin gray men.
yeah.
Like all brains.
I don't think so. People have this idea that people used to be these big, strong men. When you look at statistics from the 1950s or 60s, the average man weighed 135 pounds. So most of you are heavier than the average man, and a lot of you have way more muscle. And when you look at men from 5,000 years ago, you look at Aboriginal tribes. What do those people look like? They're crazy skinny. They're walking all the time. They're not strong. They're not strong people. Strength is not super necessary. Like your chest muscles, those are attractive to girls because of your ability to shove. That's a fighting situation, but you don't fight animals. Like your stuff's too soft. Basically, you fight other guys. So your relative strength to other guys makes you attractive in those societies. But that's what it's for, right? Like the horns of an ibex or something. It's not useful for hunting for food. It's only useful for attracting mates. And so we are some of the biggest, strongest people because we have better nutrition. We have all these other things. Our T levels have dropped, and people guess that's. But those are caused, like, the evolutionary trends are just so slow. Evolution takes such a long time to happen, and societal trends push way harder. Steroids, that beats the shit out of evolution. That's like 1,000,000 times faster. Or just a better diet. Like, look how much human beings have changed recently. You know what I mean? Like, that can't be evolution. They're the sociological factors and the diet factors. Drinking water that has, like, all water in the whole world is laced with birth control, the chemical in birth control. It's everywhere now, and it's not really like a clear way to get it out, right? So everybody's taking like estrogen, in their water. Even animals, even in the soil, even organic stuff that you get, it doesn't matter because the water they're drinking is contaminated and the ground is contaminated. And that's caused a reduction in testosterone. And then societal stuff also. And also, like, we control evolution even better than that. Because, like, the most violent, aggressive men, we just, like, kill them off or lock them up, So we're doing a way better job instead of evolution. Like, we don't have to even have to decide whether or not the girls are going to go for him or have some sense and go for this other guy. Like, we're directly influencing that. Even our influence is stronger than evolution. So I think evolution is just getting its ass kicked right now. It would take forever for human beings to change. Because look, yeah.
Okay, so follow up to that. In the movie Idiocracy, the opening scene shows two groups and shows the super intelligent, smart couple that they're like, we're too smart. We're not, it's not the right time yet to have children. And then it shows the other family, a bunch of morons, and they're having one kid after the next. They're popping out one, and then it shows fast forward 500 years later, 1,000 years later, and basically all the smartest, highest IQ people were always finding excuses to not merge. Yeah. So what's your thoughts on, are we headed on that kind of a track? Do you see that? Because I could see that those trends in that movie are literally actually happening, that there's anyways. No. But that's, I'm curious, what do you think that it's actually happening?
I don't think so, because even people that have baby mamas and are running around fucking up everybody, they usually have like 2 or 3 kids. Whereas other countries, they have a ton more kids. It like the societal culture as a whole. In the U.S., even with all the degradation and people getting
the IQ levels, what I'm saying.
Yeah, but even with that, the U.S., the birth rates are declining overall, and it's not because everybody's so smart they're not having kids. There's plenty of dumb people. They're just not having as many kids. They don't want to.
No, he's saying his IQ going down.
Yeah, is
we going to pick up like
is the trajectory that because more
IQ is not
lower
going
IQ
down.
people are having more kids.
IQ. So in the third world, the average IQ is like 84. You go to like India, average IQ is 84, 85. In the first world, the average IQ of a person is about 100. every few years they have to change the IQ test because they want to make 100 the average. But the average starts becoming 102 or 101. And so they make the IQ test a little bit harder so that the average will be 100 again, because that's the way the statistics work, right? So actually people are getting smarter, a better diet, more specialized training, the collective knowledge of everybody pushing down on other people is making people smarter overall. Yeah.
Interesting. You know, it's really just for me. It's not a question, but like when I went to France in '87, I was watching Mona Lisa, and I was taller than everybody. It was really weird. Everybody was shorter than me. I could see Mona Lisa from the back of the room. Nobody was anywhere near my height. You go back to Europe now, they're near my height. Asia, when I got to Japan, everybody was small. You know, samurai, they still have the outfits they wore. They were 5'2".
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, they are tiny shoulders, tiny. And so everybody thought that different races were stronger or weaker based on, you know, somehow some magical skin color. But what I saw in Asia, if you go to Thailand right now, you walk around the subways, this is only in 30 years. Okay, the young Thai kids are my height. Oh yeah. It's because of protein. So Asians were only short because of lack of protein. And North Koreans are 4 inches shorter than South Koreans. And they've only been separate for 40, 50, 60 years because they didn't have protein. So I was amazed. Like, we have all these like biases. The truth was Asians, even though they had a good diet in many ways, they were missing protein. And so the people today are still going up to different cultures where they ate more milk, drank milk, had more meat. And I believe from watching in my own life, everybody's going to be the same.
It's not
different races.
It's not just protein. So back when humans were hunter-gatherers, the average height of a man was 5'10". Once the agricultural revolution started and people were able to make refined grains, the average height dropped precipitously down to about 5'3", right? Because now that they weren't hunting and gathering, their diet wasn't as varied, and they were able to eat grains. Grains extend your life a little bit, but they also make you a lot shorter, right? And not quite as healthy. Because the grains, it's something about the nutrition that's in them. Grains are super resistant. Like grains are seeds. And a seed wants to get eaten by an animal that has multiple stomachs and then come out and still be able to be planted and grow again.
Okay.
So they're highly resistant to being eaten, right? So if you only have one stomach, you're going to digest part of it. It's going to resist you. When it does that, it's taking up nutrients to do that, and it's causing problems. It has nutrients in it, but you're only able to get some of the carbs, and a lot of the nutrients are passed on through because it's trying to survive. And so you went from eating a lot of food with nutrients in it to now you're eating a lot of food. You're getting enough food to eat. You're not having like problems like that, but all your nutrition is gone. If you just eat rice all day, you don't have, it just makes you sickly over time. And so that dropped to 5'3". Over time, over 30 or 40,000 years, as our site has developed, we've worked our height back up to about 5'9". And so now we have the grains, now we have the carbs, but because modern diets are so varied, we're able to eat meat and other things besides just grains. When you look at, places like Asia, they're shorter because a lot of them just ate rice. Like in Japan, it was they were basically vegetarians for a very long time. Like fish was something you ate. You didn't fish every day. That was like a special occasion meal, like in the 1700s or 1800s. At like a party, you'd have like fish. That was like, we got some fish or whatever, right? It wasn't. It's just the variation of the diet is making people healthier, and the more money and the more prosperous you can buy all these different little items and have them all ready.
So I think what you're saying, I think it's good to point these things out, is essentially what we heard was kind of a negative view of the future, right? Like, are we going to, basically, and what you're saying is our diet is better than ever.
Yeah.
And we're smarter than ever.
That's right.
That's interesting.
We're going up, baby.
That's interesting.
That's right.
That's not the narrative.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's not the narrative in society. That's not what we're being told.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're told that everything's going to shit, and we're all gonna die, and we're all killing ourselves, and
Well, three's about to break
the
out.
world's gonna end.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Bombs
relentless.
gonna drop on our heads. It's all
Yeah.
yeah.
Armageddon's gonna happen.
Yeah, Putin's gonna kill the world.
I got one. All right, this is maybe a sensitive topic, but fuck it. The whole idea of like climate change, global warming, but specifically, not like is it real or is it not, but the reality of how our planet can or will potentially transform through that, and could it actually end up being better, or what would be like maybe positive changes?
Oh, so a lot of people think global warming is this thing that it's going to make the sea levels rise, and that's going to flood, the land, and that's going to suck, and that's going to be awful. That's not what it is. If it's true, whatever, the water levels would rise very little. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that our actions are creating more CO2 in the atmosphere. Whether or not additional CO2 leads to increased temperature, that it doesn't always. Sometimes those trends are opposite. Sometimes those trends are correlated. And that's the argument people can have wherever. They tend to be correlated. But what happens is as the planet heats up, there are processes and cycles in the world. Like when you heat up oceans, they release carbon dioxide into the air. If it's true in our particular configuration of the planet and all the other stuff going on, that those things are correlated, then heating up the planet releases more CO2, which heats up the planet again, which releases more CO2, and you get a runaway effect at a certain concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere, like about 3.0 would be undoable, right? And so when we were at like 1.5, they came out with all these different things. Oh my goodness, we have to change. This is like in the 70s, like things are going crazy. If we don't change now, this trend line will go exponential and we'll be screwed, basically. A lot of people think that we're still going along that and nobody wants to change. And so it's all just going to go to shit and we're just waiting until like the year 2100 when everything's going to end. Actually, the steps we've already taken have already flattened that curve. And we're looking at that it might only go to like 2.0. And 2.0 is not that bad.
2.0 what degrees?
Like 2.0, I don't know what the units of measurement is. That's the concentration.
Concentration in the atmosphere.
Yeah. So 2.0 is okay. 2.0 is a little bit warmer. There's been life on the planet when there was a 2.0. It wasn't a big deal. It'd probably just be harder. You'd have like less arable land. It'd be a little more, the temperature would go up slightly, a few degrees. It actually makes a big deal. Like the temperature going up, around the year 500, the temperature went up, I think, like 3 degrees in Europe. And it created this population explosion because all these crops were able to grow and everything. And then in the Dark Ages, the temperature dropped about 2 or 3 degrees. And like you couldn't create, food and people were huddling up and everything. But the curve has already largely been flattened. Like it's already that problem has kind of already been fixed, actually, which is surprising, because you never hear about that. Like a lot of people didn't know that happened, but actually just the little actions that people were able to take, even China, taking whatever small actions that they took to reduce whatever, actually flattened it out. So we're looking at a much more optimistic future.
Just to show them the China thing of my background is not because of global warming. The reason why China, it's kind of a good coincidence, but the cities got so polluted back when I was there. It was 700 parts per million, and it was so bad. It was over 1,000 one day. And it was so bad that I left my house to go to a conference, which was across the road, like where we park our cars, like twice as far as that. And I literally was tasting glue in my mouth, and I felt depressed, like really depressed. Just going outside my apartment, walking 150 meters. Yeah, and it was insane. That's when I left. And what happened was that people wanted blood because one of the government's deals is they take care of you and then they don't get overthrown. And people were so pissed off about the pollution that they said, we are going to stop this pollution so we don't get overthrown. So it was actually because of a more pertinent problem. It was the government doesn't want to get beheaded. So they're like, yeah, fuck that. We're going to clean it up a bit.
That's when you get results.
We're going to clean the air. And Beijing is so much better than it used to be. And I saw it go up and down because I was there in 89 and there was no pollution. But actually, interesting, there was a lot of pollution in the dirt from the 1940s most of the pollution in the dirt in China is from like the 40s and 30s. I don't know why, but it's like they dumped a lot of lead, a lot of heavy metals. And so when you eat plants that are grown in China, a lot of it is from pollution. But it's actually not from today. It's from a long time ago. So pretty strange. But that was a funny thing about China. Yeah.
Also the hole in the ozone layer. Like you guys heard about that in the 70s, 80s. That's already been fixed, right? Just by getting rid of CFCs in your spray cans or whatever, that's actually back to normal. So a lot of people don't even know that. People still think there's a hole.
They just don't talk about it anymore.
It's all been taken care of.
So, is AI apocalypse inevitable?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Like what's an AI gonna do? If people don't understand, like if you work with computers, you understand how frustrating it is to get a computer made by one person to interact with anything. Like have you ever tried to hook up a printer to a computer? What an absolute nightmare that is. And a printer is a end retail device. It was created for like people who don't know how to use computers to be able to interface it. Mm-hmm. Just now, computers, because of the invention of Wi-Fi, are able to connect through Wi-Fi, and then your router just handles it, right? But even modern day systems, just trying to get software to work on a computer that has certain security settings turned on is a nightmare. And so the idea that an AI is just a program. It doesn't run the computer. It's not the operating system of the computer itself. And so there's not a way for it to I'm going to figure out how to do this like a virus and extend over here. I'll spread from this computer to this computer and do what? Like, what are you going to do? Like shut down the network so people can't use the internet? That's availability. You could steal some data. That's confidentiality. Or you could destroy the data on the computer, and that's integrity. But
well, people were saying it's going to melt down the nuclear power plants and stuff.
Oh, no.
And set off nuclear bombs, send them over.
So those systems are ICS systems. They're SCADA networks, like secure data. I can't remember the acronym. Those are not hooked up to the internet at all. Those are networked, but those are closed networks with all kinds of security. Basically, you have to have a computer that matches the exact same MAC address and is here in this position to be able to do this, and have all these crypto keys. It's just not possible. And our nuclear systems don't even use computers. Well, I mean, they use computers, but they use stuff that has like floppy drives and all these other really just hard to use crap. Just absolute crap technology. Stuff that I'm surprised if they shot off a nuke, if they tried to, I'd be surprised if like more than half of them actually shot off. I think there would be problems, right? You test the system and make sure it works. I bet there'd be some kind of issue, but those you can't hack into them because viruses and things actually use a surprising amount of bandwidth, and they're based on infrastructures and code that doesn't even exist there. You write a virus, it's got like some kind of library dependencies. You go to the computer and they're not even there. You write a virus that opens up this hole and exploits this to go into there. Well, that doesn't even exist. This is a computer that has very weak memory and has lots of hardware segmentation and isolated controls. So it's just not even remotely, you can't even hack into it. So what would an AI do? An AI can't even like AI would have to be hooked up to a mechanical hand to do anything in the real world. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's just code that's looping around. It could shut down like some nav satellites, or it could, turn off this or that, or delete all your data and encrypt all the government secrets. But it can't choke you. You know what I mean? Like, you'll be fine. It can't stab you. You know what I mean?
Turn off the Dynamics robot, though.
Turn off the electricity. That would kill
It's a
us.
Boston Dynamics fully autonomous Atlas, and then the AI is controlled in that, so now it has a physical body.
That thing sucks, though. It can barely it can run kind of like a horse, but like a horse can't. What the fuck's a horse gonna do to me?
What if the AI does social hacking? So social hacking is when someone's emotions get manipulated. So,
Sexy picture of a girl. You click on it.
Exactly. So deep fakes.
You can do that. That's true.
Deep fakes.
Well, it does that now.
Right, it does that now.
But then it doesn't defect that it's the president of the United States, and
Can
he
it
gets
have
the person as the
consciousness?
president say, push the nuke, and he goes,
know
yes,
what I mean?
sir.
That's a good question.
That's really the point.
So-
Because if it's not conscious, it can't do any of this shit.
So Sky just
If
said.
it is, then it could.
So Sky just said, do computers have consciousness?
Can they?
Or can they? My belief is that this idea of consciousness there's a reason it can't be. Usually, when an idea can't be defined, it's very nebulous. It's because it's not real. Like consciousness is not real, right? You have your brain. Things are going on in your brain, and there are feedback loops that come off of those and loop back, just like a neural network. So you're doing something and you get feedback, right? Your car has cruise control. It's driving at a certain speed. Once it reaches a certain speed, once it notices the wheel moving a certain way, it has a feedback loop that feeds back into the input that tells it how to drive. You could claim that's consciousness because it's driving, and based on what's happening in the real world, it's making observations with its senses, with its eyes, its nose, its mouth, and making adjustments to reach whatever goals it has in its system. Your goals are largely not in your control, right? They're a lot of them hardwired by reality and by things in your brain that you have no control over. And where would you draw the line? You have like humans, which have a ton of feedback loops, cats, which have some feedback loops, fish that have very few feedback loops, bacteria that have some. They don't really have a neural network, but they have like chemical feedback loops, and then smaller and smaller things that have less and less feedback loops. But the existence of a feedback loop is like a wiring of a circuit. Like a cruise control has a wire, a physical wire that goes back into the input of the control that teaches it how to drive. That's a linear control system. But is that conscious? Like when you split your brain in half, this half and this half, they have whole different things going on. They have different consciousnesses, right? So there's not this like guy inside your head that's thinking your thoughts and doing things. Like if I removed part of your brain, it just wouldn't be there anymore. That's what I think.
So what about if they could make like sex robots that look exactly like women and you could not tell the difference, but we knew they were not conscious? Would men be attracted to them?
Oh, of course. Of course.
Bring him in. I'll fuck the Get hard on.
So they totally would, because like when you talk to a girl, are you worried about whether or not she's like, you're not sitting there like a philosopher and like, I wonder if she really has consciousness. I wonder if this like a dog. Are dogs conscious? Maybe they're not, but you just enjoy the things you get out of them and the way you interact with it. Like when you play a video game, you're not sitting there like you're talking to the NPC and he's like, at the end of the mission, he's talking to you. You're feeling like emotions. It doesn't matter to you that the character in the video game is not conscious. Maybe he is. Maybe computers themselves are conscious. They have way more feedback loops than we do in a lot of ways, right? But yeah, of course they would. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'd be banging them all the time.
and he'd be self-lubricating.
That's right.
A few gallons in there.
You guys got like math questions? I like math or physics.
I don't know if this is too broad or whatnot.
Okay.
But I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on like calculus, and I mean, everybody's got different levels of understanding, but like some way in which it is useful for explaining some sort of natural phenomenon or other phenomenon. Like how can people think of calculus in a way that's very useful, maybe in their own lives, where like I was like, oh, this thing has an integral relationship, or this is some differential that really, yeah.
So in calculus you have derivatives and you got integrals. Integrals are the opposite of derivatives, right? Calculus is only based on derivatives and integrals. That's all it cares about. So
Can you define those two words?
This is what I'll do. Let's say I'm driving, right? And I'm driving like normal, and I step on the gas and I'm flooring it, right? And I go from like 0 to like 135 miles an hour with the top down. I don't know. So I'm doing that.
Where'd you get that idea?
I don't know. And then people were like, oh, that's cool. You went from 0 to 135. They want to know how quick, how fast it was. Like how quickly did you go from 100 to 135? That rate of change is a derivative, right? So when stock goes up, the rate of change at which it goes up, the slope of that curve is a derivative. So a derivative is just a rate of change. And when you take like a parabolic curve, like a fancy little curly curve, like one like this, the rate of change. It's just rise over run. When it's a curvy line, how do you know the rate of change? Well, the rate of change is different at each point. You pick a point and you find out the slope of that line. That's a derivative. That's all it is, right? So the derivative of distance, me coming from here to the door, is the rate of change, my velocity. How fast did I get to the door? That's a derivative. Or I was going at a certain speed and then I saw a cat. I ran even faster to the door, right? The point where I changed from this speed to this speed is acceleration. How fast is my speed changing? That's the second derivative, right? Let's say I'm driving and I'm trying to get to Paul's house. I'm flooring it for a little bit. There's a cop. I got to slow down. I come over here. I take this road. I'm going faster, slower, faster, slower, faster, slower. There's all these rates of change and all this other stuff, but you don't care about that. You care how many hours did it take for me to get from here to Paul's house. So that curve, you have all these sharp line. You're going fast, going slow, fast, slow. Here's your speed over time. And then that ends. Take all the area under that graph, right? Shade it all in. If you add up all that space, that'll tell you the distance. That is called an integral. The integral is the area that's under that curve, right? And the reason these are useful is because the lines are not sharp, right? The lines are curved. So like, how do you measure a slope on a curve? You got to use certain points, and there's all kinds of other complicated stuff to that. That's all it is. So acceleration, stomping on the gas, the integral of that is the speed on the speedometer. The integral of that is how far you've gone. That's your mileage, right? So that's all it is.
Is it possible to make real life lifesavers?
What do you mean?
It kind of is. I know what he's saying.
Lightsaber. Lightsaber.
It kind of is. You can't use a laser because lasers don't. There's no way to be able to aim a laser to where it like stops.
Terminates.
Yeah, a laser goes on forever. Lasers are incredibly inefficient for transferring power that way. What you could do is you could have superheated material like plasma, right? And plasma has properties that make it very magnetic. So you could create a magnetic bottle to hold that plasma in, and you could move that towards somebody, and then that would cut into them, right? Because the magnetic bottle holds the plasma in place, but allows physical things to permeate through it. So you could actually do that, or you could. I've seen people on YouTube. They take like a propane torch and they just make it super hot and they run that, and that's kind of like a lightsaber, in a way. But yeah, plasma would be the way. Yeah, and a magnetic field.
Has anyone tried to make that yet?
I think somebody made one of those. Yeah, because you've seen those little things where it's like the circle, the little novelty toys on the desk where it's got the little circle and it's got the thing in the middle and you put your fingers on it and the lines go up to your fingers. That's plasma, and that's demonstrating a property of plasma called electric conductance.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that's plasma, right there. It's not very strong, but you could, people, I've seen them on YouTube, or not YouTube, like some other video site, right? I've seen it. They have something like that. I don't know if it's plasma, but it's probably plasma.
How hot can plasma be heated to, or how hot can it get?
Plasma is the final form of matter, so it can be so infinitely hot that there's not even materials anymore, to where you can't have atoms. They break down into subatomic particles. That's plasma.
What's like the potential as a derivative of that? Like how long would it take, based on whatever technology you have now, assuming to get your plasma to be as like hot as
it could be super fast.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Is that what a fakes like an artificial sun is? They're making in China. And
yeah.
plasma.
Plasma is not inherently bright. So an artificial sun would just be like a bunch of energy. Probably they're dumping so much energy into it that the thing in the center probably is plasma. I would imagine, like a light bulb has tungsten that gets heated up. If you heat it up with plasma, it would be even brighter because of the resistance in it. But yeah, but really the reason the sun is bright is because of the hydrogen fusion that's happening, not because it's plasma. So I don't know. I haven't heard.
One more question on that. What type of technology or devices would you need? I know I'm asking not how to make a lightsaber, but theoretically, to heat plasma up like that. Like, how do you even heat plasma up like that?
All you would need is just the electric circuit in your house. You would take, if you could get enough amps into something, you could run those amps across something that has very low resistance, or that many volts across that, and just have a ton of energy being poured into something. If you have a small amount of material and you pour a lot of energy into it, it gets very hot. So all you need is enough energy to heat up that particular material. So you just have a little bit of material in the fang or whatever you want to call it, and heat that up, right? And you can turn anything into plasma.
So what element would you use for
Like
that
this?
lightsaber?
This isn't CRT, right? If this is a plasma screen, it creates plasma behind it and shines lights through that. I mean, even that's generating plasma. And a plasma screen TV is pretty hot. When you get closer, it does kind of heat up your room a little bit. Not that much, though. And it plugs into the 15 amp outlet in your room. So not much energy at all, actually.
So what material would you use to heat up to have that plasma for that lightsaber? What would be the element that you'd use?
I don't know. I don't know. Because you'd have to use something. You couldn't hold it in a magnetic bottle when it wasn't a plasma. So you would have to take it somewhere else. You'd have to have it like in a vat. Probably something that was already gaseous. Right? Yeah, because if something was solid, you would have to take it through all the stages of matter to get it up. You would want something that has a very low melting point, very low vaporization point, very low point of plasma, right? You would want something that takes the least amount of energy to heat up to plasma as possible. And then you would like scoop that up with a magnetic bottle. Like you'd have your lightsaber and you'd like push it into it and you'd extend a magnetic bottle around some plasma and you'd pull it out. And hopefully that would be strong enough. And then you would hit something. And hopefully the disturbance, if you're hitting something, wouldn't disturb the magnetic field enough for the plasma leaks out. It may be a leaky lightsaber, I don't know. You may to go to cut something and it just goes, and it just sprays everywhere.
So the plasma then is not, I really don't understand much about it, so I'm asking, is like created by you putting in so much energy into whatever element
so
that it can become that?
So saying the word plasma is like saying a solid. Okay. Anything can be a solid. Anything can be a liquid, anything can be a gas. These are all where they have more and more and more energy. Anything can become plasma, right? Like the center of the sun has an atom of plasma in it. There's probably plasma in the center of our Earth. You know, it's so hot, it probably is plasma. I don't know. Yeah, that's probably why it's so fluid. But
So we've been chasing fusion energy, limitless, almost free power for a long time. Now I'm reading all these like very serious journals saying that within 10 years it's going to be done. We will have fusion energy and electricity will essentially be free. So, you won't have to, put a nail in the wall to hold that painting up because you can just have an electric, like a magnetic, everything will change. Like once we have energy, free energy, things that we can't even imagine. But the people that do imagine it are going to get rich as fuck, right? Because they're going to think of the ideas first, how to use free energy. The reason why we don't have unlimited water is we can't do the osmosis, we can't clean it. We just have this. We believe that and electricity costs a lot of money, so everything is based on low amount of electricity, right? But if energy was free, then it would change everything. So, what do you think about fusion energy? I don't know how much you know about like what their state of research, but how close are we? What's the main stopping block? And then when it happens, like what are going to be the main like ABC easy kind of ways to monetize or things that will be open that would never be open before that you can think of?
So you guys know, E equals MC squared, right? What that statement means, people say, oh, that means like smarter physics guys. Well, that means matter and energy are the same thing. No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. They're not the same thing, obviously. The C here is not just a number. It's a number with some units on it. But what it does mean is that a tiny amount of matter, because C squared is like 3 times 10 to the 8. That's 300 million times 300 million, right? Times 300 million, and repeat that like that's squared, right? So you have that times matter. So a tiny amount of matter, like a single cup of water, has enough energy in it to like explode entire planets and destroy everything. Everything we've been doing up until now has been 0.00000% efficient. Hydrogen fusion is 0.2% efficient. That's crazy. Because hydrogen fission is like 0.000 whatever. That's all the bombs you've seen, right? Some of you guys have seen like a hydrogen fusion explosion. 0.2% efficient. That's really good, right? Like you can get 0.2% of the energy in that cup of water. That's so much energy, it's insane. I think it would be, I think it's so much energy you wouldn't even have to worry about distribution. You know, it's so much energy that you could almost just transmit the energy wirelessly. Like wireless has enormous losses. You've seen those little wireless charging pads. Your phone has to be lined up perfectly to it, and if you do it like this, it won't charge. It's because it drops with the square of the distance. So if it's a millimeter away, it's this much power. If it's 2 millimeters, it's half the power. If it's 4 millimeters, it's a fourth of the power, right? So even with massive R squared losses, you could still transmit wireless power. I think that would be a big thing. In your house, you would have wireless power. Power is transmitted through waves that somewhat heat your body up, right? But not like the energy of a wave is related to its frequency. Power waves are only like 60 hertz. They're not high frequency. So they're not going to heat up your body much. They actually don't have much energy in them. They're very large. It's not ionizing radiation. It's not going to just give you cancer. You're not going to get cancer from it. Right. Like getting cancer from that is like thinking you're going to get cancer from like radio waves. You know, like there's radio waves, there's Wi-Fi waves everywhere, there's cell phone waves everywhere. They don't have enough energy to like change the compounds of chemicals, to like knock off electrons and stuff. So in your house, you'd have your little hub, just like your Wi-Fi router, might even have it next to it. You got your Wi-Fi router, you've got your power router, right? And then everything in your house that you want to turn on, you've got your little power guy here. You'd have a thing on your device that stops power from going into it. You'd have some kind of physical separator. And then you'd turn it on, and then it would just be absorbing power readily. Yeah, that's probably what it would be. It'd be like Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So everything in your house, yeah, you would have like magnets that would just be able to hold everything to the walls. You wouldn't have power wires anywhere. You would take a light bulb. The light bulb, you'd have like a little thing on it, like a little switch. You'd turn the switch on the light bulb, and the light bulb would just start turning on. Or it'd have some safety feature where you got to screw it into a chandelier, and the chandelier, like everything would be available to be powered. You'd have to physically have it like broken off to not be powered, and you'd have to redesign some electronics to not just absorb that power immediately. But,
So what's going to happen to all the electricians?
they're gonna have to get real jobs. I don't know. They're gonna have to do something else.
He's an electrician.
You have to rip out all the old wiring and.
You wouldn't have to rip out I mean, it would just be useless. You wouldn't need it. You know.
Someone's got to install the boxes, right? Or set the system
Yeah,
up.
exactly. The system probably would still be wires run to your house because the infrastructure is already there, and like you wouldn't want to have wireless power. It is a ton of power to radiate. Like if you want to go a mile with that, like think about how much power a cell phone tower has. A cell phone tower, your phone can only transmit half a watt, right? And so that's why you can only be a certain distance from the cell phone tower. The cell phone tower could be unlimitedly powerful. Like if you're standing near the antenna of a cell phone tower, it'd just cook you alive. You know what I mean? Even standing at the base of a cell phone tower can be pretty dangerous. That's why those places are cordoned off, right? So there's so much energy being passed through that because they're using microwaves. And microwaves, although they won't kill you, they do heat up water. They do heat up your body, you know, and that's microwaves are the size of these.
Okay, so a follow-up to that is then what you envision for this wireless power, is it using microwaves or some other type of wave technology?
Not microwaves. Power would be large waves at a low frequency, I would imagine. Because so it's hard to say because energy is proportional to frequency. The higher frequency you have, the more energy you can put into a wave, right? But that energy is not the same thing as like voltage or amperage, right? So you would want high volts, high amps. You would want like an actual power signal. Like a power wave is like, God, how tall is a power wave? A power wave is like, it's like it would go from like here all the way up to power lines. It would be that tall. It's an enormous wave, and its period extends miles. Like you've seen waves that look like this, right? That curve, it's not this size relative to your head. It's so large, it's like as far as you can see, and the wave is just extending down. Whereas millimeter waves, it's a millimeter. So it's like this size, right? So I don't know, that's what I would think.
in terms of receiving, do you imagine that there would be giant receiving walls, or like on buildings they would install giant multi-story high sections that would receive those giant waves more efficiently?
That's a good point. That's right. To get a larger wave, you need a larger antenna, because the antenna has to be the wavelengths, divided by 2, right? That's a dipole antenna where you got the wavelength over 2. You can have a wavelength over 4. This cell phone has, I think, maybe 500 antenna in it. It's got an antenna that's perfectly sized for the GPS, one that's sized for this, and one that's sized to detect this, and it's got an NFC antenna. It's got different sized antennas for different situations. It's like that's why you don't have that problem when you go in the movie theater and you don't get reception anymore. Is because there's different sized antennas that receive different waves and different levels of degradation. So you're right. You would need a big ass antenna. I didn't think about that. Might be kind of a dick pain. I don't know. That's why you would just want to route it through cables and just have it come into your house, and then you don't need these crazy big things.
What about cell signals and low testosterone? Do you think that's true, accurate?
No, that's not accurate, because in order for
What's the question?
he said, do cell phone signals cause like lower T? The reason it has no effect is because in order to affect matter, energy waves move electrons around, right? They move electrons around. That changes the bonds between materials and it ionizes material, right? So you have like a salt in your body. You've got like HCl or whatever. You've got something like hydrochloric acid, HCl, right? It has an ionic bond where the Cl just takes that electron away from hydrogen and says, "Give me that." Now you're positively charged. I'm negatively charged. Now we're attracted, electrically. I have your electron. But then a wave comes over like an X-ray and knocks that electron away. Now there's no bond. And so the acid in your stomach now turns into hydrogen gas and probably chlorine gas. And then your body starts breaking down. It gets ionized. That's ionizing radiation. You have to hit certain energy gaps and levels to reach that. And that energy is only ultraviolet and above, right? Waves that are below that are not ionizing, and so they can't have an effect like that. They're not strong enough to knock electrons off, and so they can't make any chemical change in your body.
And that includes like millimeter waves?
That includes radio waves, microwaves, millimeter waves, and light waves all the way up to violet. So none of if microwaves did that, then light waves would be even stronger, and they would even have an even greater effect.
So like the whole standing in front of a microwave thing is...
Well, standing in front of a microwave is because microwaves, although they won't change the chemicals in your body, they can heat up parts of your body. So like if you took a microwave and like ran it on, like you put somebody in a microwave, it'd like cook them alive, right? Also, if you have a pacemaker or certain sensitive electronic devices in your body, if you have those and you turn on a microwave is supposed to block all the radiation coming out, because the holes in the microwave are half of the wavelength of the microwave, right? They're a certain size. If you have a certain size hole that's too big, waves pass through. If the circle is this small, waves cannot pass through, but you can still see it because light waves are smaller and they can pass through. They have a shorter wavelength. So you can see through the microwave without having them pass through. Older microwaves, they didn't do it right. And so older microwaves actually do leak microwave energy, right? And that can mess with, like if you have a pacemaker, that can mess with that. I remember when I worked in government, people with pacemakers couldn't even be on the second floor because there was too many microwaves running, and you could walk into a room and just like die, Wow. But also like if you're putting your face in front of a microwave, it's like heating up like water in your eyes and heating up stuff in other places. It could really hurt you because it heats it up very quickly. And you don't really notice until like all of a sudden you have scalding water inside your brain, and that's like what are you going to do? You can't do anything.
Is that like the weaponized technology that the government has, or certain armies have? I believe it's microwave technology.
Yes.
Where they have like those
Creates heat,
panels.
Yeah,
Where
or
people literally getting sunburned at the riots, or whatever, from having those blasts out there,
Yep.
cooking them. So it's like that technology.
It is that. That's the same technology.
Could you like really weaponize that too, or use that as like a gun or something, where
Yeah.
hit someone with like a like a fire blast, so to speak, but it's just a chemical reaction to the burn or something.
Yeah, it takes so much energy to do that though. It's very like you wouldn't have that in a gun. You would have like a whole truck with tons of power capacity. But yeah, they have those.
But I mean, weren't all computers and all devices start up really bulky and clunky, and then we learned how to make it smaller and more efficient?
We learned how to do that because of our ability to change the size of the silicon transistor gates, though. Like we've overcome the heat that gets caused by having to move pieces of information around the circuit. But the energy requirements of that, we're already using lithium ion. And lithium ion is so energy dense, it's like a bomb. It explodes. Your cell phone, if the thing gets punctured and the electrolyte, the cathode and the anode, if those things short circuit, it explodes and it causes all this fire. It's the same energy as you like. There's nothing that we've found that's more energy dense than something like that, or gasoline, or certain carbon fuels. It's hard to find something more energy dense than that. You would have to find that in order to reduce it down, basically. Yeah, you would have to do that.
All right, I got a super cool one for you. And maybe total magic bullshit, but is it possible to, scientifically, to use, say, something like sound waves and frequencies to maybe move things or change, like, the weight or the density of things? Because there's a theory that in the old ancient times somehow they build the pyramids by making the weight of the giant stones less heavy and shit like that. But even if that's all bullshit, is that technology possible, or is there no way that sound waves and frequencies could ever affect something like that?
Yes, it is possible. Sound waves are not electromagnetic waves. They're different. Sound waves are compression waves. They work by one atom hitting another and pushing it along. That's why when a bomb goes off, the shockwave pushes you back. It's not electrical energy. It actually is the pressure of the material. So sound waves do move things. And whenever a bomb goes off, you see it. The windows rattle. Like, sound waves are physical compression waves.
Your voice moves the mirror. I mean, the glass window.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it is real energy, but it's pretty inefficient. And I mean, you wouldn't use it to you wouldn't put like a speaker underneath imagine they take a speaker and put a piece of paper on top of it and blast the speaker, run it full blast and see how much it moves the piece of paper. Not much at all.
One quick thing. Okay, just like, it's not scientific, but questions are coming up that I thought my weird knowledge might help. So the pyramids, there was a French geologist who went to Egypt, and he chipped a piece off of the pyramids and tested it in a laboratory. And he found there was an ancient form of concrete. So they didn't move big stones. There was no magic. The Egyptian government immediately outlawed research on the pyramids. It kicked them out of the country. So there was no magic. Don't worry about that. Next thing was T levels. In my mind, I don't know for sure, but the only thing that's really changed the last few years is people have gotten fat as fuck. And when you get fat as fuck, your T levels drop.
What about chemicals?
Pretty much everything drops. Yeah. Well, the thing is, whenever there's a cause that we don't know yet, for sure, a lot of magical thinking or random thinking comes up, right? So we start to say, oh my God, it's the Wi-Fi, it's killing us, and, the witches, or they're turning into witches, we come up with a lot of things. But the thing is, just think about it realistically. Food, it's a stupid idea that food doesn't have nutrition anymore. Look at us. We're smarter, we're stronger. How the fuck can food not have nutrition? We would all be fucking sickly and dead. We're not. But people are fat as fuck. And that fucks up everything in your body. So don't be fat as fuck. Get in good shape. I had a baby in 6 weeks when I wanted a baby at 53. And I don't know if somebody could have done it in 5 weeks back in the 20s or some shit. But just basically, don't. It's a witch hunt, is my mind. I seen a million now. It's this. Yeah. And whenever you see that, you see a kind of an emotional, societal thing going on where people are just in the dark. They don't want to look at the facts. They need to eat better food and exercise. Nobody wants the basics. They want magic. They want demons. They want government is against us, the tobacco companies. They don't want to say, I shouldn't smoke, right? It's just like the way people are. So whenever you hear these things, T levels, just look at the obesity rates.
Correlation.
Just look at the obesity rates, and you're just like, that's real, and you can see it. And then read about, your IQ goes down. Everything gets worse when you get obese, And so, rates of, life expectancy is dropping, obesity. It's like, I'm not saying it definitely is the cause, but I'm saying like, I've been watching now sidelines. I think it is. And the more you think about it, like, what else has really changed? Not that much has changed, And then the other thing was, you said something that I think is totally blue pill. But we all have blue pill ideas. But you said, when we talked about sex robots, you immediately said, will men, with sex robots, right? The thing is this, I think, and I've never heard this ever, women are exclusive use of robotic sex toys. Men do not use them. I've never used any robotic tool for...
I don't think I would have a desire for that.
But I'm not talking about the reality. Men don't use those. Men, until now, not the theoretical, but just right now, have you used a mechanical robot to get off? No. I have not. Like really, I've never. The only time I was in a hotel, we called it the jerk off hotel because they hand you a tube to jerk off in Japan, and then you get your own room and stuff and porn. And they handed me this tube, and I didn't even use it. And the guy was like, "Why don't you use it? These are great Japanese things." I'm like, "Your hand's fine,
Okay, but then
because so you can't take anybody in these rooms. You got to go by yourself. So let me say. So the thing is sex robots are used by women only until now. But every discussion is, are men going to rape sex robots?
Okay, so
wait. You finish. So everything is women use all the sex toys. Wait. So and yet all the fear is, are men going to become even more violent and even more crazy when sex things, and we don't even fucking use them. If there's evil with sex toys, it's 100% women. Now, I don't think there is. I think that's a stupid idea. But if there were, who's using it? Who's using sex robots?
But then again,
females.
Why do men get
we don't
turned
use
on
them.
by hentai?
That's cartoons.
Why do men get turned on by hentai?
But that's not a sex machine. That's just porn in like cartoon form. We're not talking about machines. We're talking about sex toys. Yeah, sex toys. Women use them. If they are evil, women are using evil things, right? But men are not. We have all this. They always say that we do no research on women. It's all on men. The research is all for women's sex toys. There's no research for men's sex toys. There's no research for men's contraceptives. It all goes to women. Yet we somehow, in people's convoluted minds, even our minds, we think we're bad and we're going to do the wrong things. We don't even use them. I don't even want them. Some guy had a 3D sex thing. He came to Bangkok and he was like a tech guy and he wanted me to get interested in this company, and I put it on. I said, "That's boring." And I just, it was just totally boring. I thought I really did. There was nothing erotic about it. Like when you watch a porn, it's erotic, but the 3D thing, it wasn't. It was totally, I don't know. It was just like a bread with no flavor, meat with no flavor. So I just wanted to clear up those non-scientific things.
Who wants to ask a question who hasn't asked any yet? Anybody? Oh, here you go.
Maybe referring back to the idea of energy, and I would say extracting it more like from antennas in the air as opposed to power stations. Is that kind of a correct assessment?
I don't know. I don't know actually. It'd be so much energy. I guess it really would just be more efficient to not. I mean, it would always be. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's always more efficient to transmit energy wired, always. But in a world where you have hydrogen fusion, there's so much energy, the efficiency might not matter anymore. But it's so to deal with wireless energy, right? Like already Wi-Fi signals, things crashing into each other, taking up all the bands. That's already annoying enough. It probably still would be wired because homes just don't need that much energy, even if it was unlimited. You know what I mean? The real use would be taking that energy and being able to use to mine materials, from other things besides Earth, like be able to mine the moon. The moon's got a ton of materials, being able to do that, using the energy to do that, and the energy to run machines, and just be able to have machines that build other machines, and then those things can go out and build enormous structures that create even more energy, like solar arrays right next to the sun that orbit it, almost like a Dyson sphere, right? Where like you have a star and you have it surrounded by things that are absorbing all of its energy and then piping that out and using that to create, starships and all kinds of other stuff. Energy constraint is a big deal, because once you get over that, since energy is matter, you've also gotten over the material constraint. That's the cool thing, is that now not only is energy free, material is also free. Right? That's the cool thing. That's.
You mean 3D printing?
Well, not 3D. I mean, just
the creation, putting molecules together, creating matter.
You could even do. Well, that's like the least efficient way to do it. You could still do that. You with someone with that much energy, you could collide materials together, and you could turn lead, and just slam some more protons into it, and turn it into gold. Right
so
now,
literal alchemy, and we could basically create alchemy.
We have that right now, but it costs like $50,000 to make like a little grain of gold. It's not worth it. But with enough energy, it wouldn't matter. You could make any material you want to.
So gold would be no matter anymore.
Gold would be valueless. Well, actually, all material would basically be valueless. I mean, all that would matter is the access to that architecture that allows that fusion energy. That would be the big deal. So much energy to be able to create anything, and that would just be insane. That much energy. You would only be limited by the laws of physics. It would be hard to like travel to other places, even with that much energy. It would still, the time and being able to overcome like distances, and this is so far, like Mars takes 6 months to get from here. Having unlimited energy wouldn't help you with that. You know what I mean? You can only go a certain speed. You can only there's limits and things to that, right? It's still, you still can't like warp space time and like fold it. You know what I mean? Like a sheet of paper. If I wanted to get somewhere, I could just, instead of traveling along the sheet of paper, I could bend the sheet of paper in half, and then now the two pieces are touching, and now I can just like walk to like another star or something like that. We don't have energy. We can't relate it directly to gravity in that way, right? Like enough to be able to move things around. But yeah, having free energy means you have free matter of any element. Right, and that's crazy.
Wait, so to follow up to that, so would that mean in that world where energy is free, therefore materials are essentially free, then the things that would then all the value would be transferred to the information?
I mean,
like
yeah.
The value, like we would then, the materials are essentially free, so that means all the value will be in the information of how to use that energy.
Right, but also it would be in the infrastructure that all that unlimited energy built. Right, so you create all those hydrogen fusion generators. The ability to create a hydrogen fusion generator will go way up, right? So the materials used for that would still be pretty pricey, even as you're creating more and more energy out of these things. Because, different countries are going to want their own. They're going to want to. So yeah, the technology, the information to develop it would be pretty high. Even be able to create tons of material, you still have to like turn that material into other chemicals through certain processes. Having unlimited energy can't just, you can create a bunch of carbon or create a bunch of oxygen or whatever, but you have to do a chemical process to turn that into CO2. So you couldn't just like stamp out CO2 like on the like Star Trek
replicator.
They have the replicator, yeah, where you can like tea Earl Grey hot. You still can't do that. Okay. But you can make all the materials and then just swirl them up and mix them together.
Do you think we'll have a time machine?
So already scientists have calculated theoretically that when two black holes orbit each other and they're creating gravity waves, there's a path you can travel between there to where you pop up at a time that's earlier than when you started. If that's possible, then if you did that, it wouldn't matter how far you went back in time, because you could do it over and over and over again. You could do it 1,000,000 times and just inch along back to whatever time you wanted to. So it wouldn't be a machine. The thing that like time, currently all we know is that gravity, tons of gravity, can dilate time, and in some cases could reverse time. And so what you would really want to do is you wouldn't even build a machine. You would just go to, if to create a mill, you wouldn't dig a well and create a river. You would go to a river that already exists, and you would just put your water wheel in. So you'd go to a black hole binary system, and then you just orbit it, right? And you'd put people in there and do that or whatever. And that may be that theory might be wrong. They may have miscalculated. It appears to be that way, that you could end up in an earlier time. But if you can do that in any place, in any way, then you can just do that in limited amounts of time. You know,
it could be one person or whoever went through those two black holes.
Right, exactly.
That would be the same.
Everything else would be the same. So you're not winding back. Like, you are not stagnant while the rest of the world is what. Well, actually, no. Oh, you're talking about the guy? No.
Yeah, would the guy get younger?
No, the guy wouldn't get younger. The guy, he would end up in an earlier time.
Yeah.
Right? Theoretically. So the guy is aging like normal as he's traveling around. The idea is that relative to him, time has gone backwards.
So when he went back in time, the machine wouldn't exist and he wouldn't be able to keep doing it.
Well, because the machine did not. The machine went with him. Yeah.
It's just a craft.
You can't just go out.
So that's like these paradoxes and these problems. When in physics, in statistics, in everything else, when you run into paradoxes, people wrestle with paradoxes for centuries, and people make this mistake over and over and over again. When you run into a paradox, it means that you're making a mistake. It means that there's something about it that's wrong.
Because what I'm thinking is, if you went into the machine, by the time you came out of the machine, it wouldn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah. So Right.
No, but in this case, the machine is not the machine. It's the two black holes.
No, but the black holes wouldn't be together then.
Exactly.
They came together at a certain point, and then you went
He's
into
right.
them. By the time you get out, they're in different places.
Right. And the fact that shows you that there is a paradox shows you that our understanding of it is wrong. Every time you find a paradox, it means your understanding is wrong. It doesn't mean, oh, you need to become a genius and try to figure it out. It's a paradox for a reason, right? It's a paradox because there's an error in your problem. If you're solving a math problem and the end is like 5 = -7, it doesn't mean that you need to find out why 5 is equal to -7. It means that you just messed up your math. And that's always been the case. It's always been the case that people have really struggled with philosophical problems, all kinds of other problems in every academic field, and they wrestle with them for a long time. But it always turns out to be that that they're just clinched, and that you just have to solve it a different way. When you look at a problem that seems very difficult, a different way, it becomes very easy. Like if I wanted to predict the weather, right? I could map out everything with a Doppler radar, find out how the weather patterns are moving, and then I could say this percentage of this area will get rained on. That's done with differential equations. They're very complicated. They're insanely complex. You need tons of computers to do it. Or you could use a Laplace transform, which you take all this hard differential equation stuff, you transform the problem into an algebra problem. And now it becomes so simple that anyone can do it. Like a 14-year-old kid could solve it. And you do that by taking the problem and looking at it a different way. And a lot of problems in physics and math are like that. You'll beat your head into the ground trying to solve this part. But by looking at it a different way, it becomes very easy. And a lot of stuff's like that in physics, actually. Yeah.
I got another one for you if I can. All right. Is teleportation and wormholes. Like Stargate or deatomization and reatomization. Is that possible? And even if the technology isn't possible now, in this unlimited or hydrogen power or hydrogen fusion idea, is that possible? Even if you had to go from point A to point B and set up both, say, receivers and senders, whatever, what's the science on that?
I think so. Theoretically, the speed of light should limit anything, even the transfer of information. Quantum physics tells you that that's not the case. Having an entangled particle here, you can move it anywhere across the whole galaxy. When this one spins, this one spins. And it happens instantaneously, supposedly. Right? It happens much faster than the speed of light. in order to teleport, you could have something in a certain configuration and entangle every single one of these particles with some particles over here. When this thing moves, this thing moves. I think it would just be too intricate because everything in your body is moving all the time. And one of the problems, like with Schrodinger's cat, people think that Schrodinger's cat, the lesson from that is the cat is both alive and dead. That's not the lesson. The lesson is that it's impossible. That means you're looking at it wrong. That's why Schrodinger said that. He said, you're trying to find out, like, oh, is a particle over here or is it over here? The actual answer is that you can't look at it that way, right? The particle has a certain position. By finding the position, you actually have to interact with it. And in that interaction, it causes the speed to be unknowable. Or you can know the speed of it. But by knowing the speed of it, you can't know where the particle is at a certain point. That is not that's not a mathematical thing to be overcome. That's a problem that we would have to use another instrument to solve, right? When people talk about where's an electron, they're not looking at it with their eye. You can't see an electron. You have to shoot something at it, and then it hits it and bounces off. So you can say, oh, the electron was right there. I don't know where it is now. I don't know how fast it's going, but it was there because I shot something at it and I saw it bounce off. It bounced off and hit back to my eye. So I think teleportation, with unlimited energy, you would still have that problem of not being able to know where every single thing is at any one point. And I think it would just be such a waste. It would be easier just to like bend space-time and just like warp it or like find a place where space-time is warped, like this part of the room and that part of the room. It appears like they're far away. In space-time, they would still look like they're far away, but then his foot would be like sticking out of the cabinet, right? Like just like sticking out of it, and just like a portal on a
so like the Stargate. So the Stargate, the idea of the Stargate.
Yeah, exactly.
The bending of space time, and so the two
Yeah.
Stargates would essentially just bend space time together and just walk right through.
So is it possible to create technology that, like you said, allows you to bend both sides of the paper together and just walk across?
No way. No way. The only thing we found that can bend space-time is gravity. And gravity is like the suckiest force in the whole universe. Gravity sucks so bad. This is how bad gravity sucks. Watch. Right? This is a planet. This planet is like 6 times 10 to the 30 whatever kilograms. It's enormous. But the chemical energy in my legs is stronger. Right? So my legs are stronger than this planet. That's crazy. I overcame it, right? For a brief second, I reached almost escape velocity. No, that's a joke, but that's how weak gravity is. You have to have so much material. And so to bend space-time takes an absolute ton of material. So I don't think you could replicate that with just like a gate or a device. I think I don't know.
Perhaps there's an undiscovered material that exists in some other galaxy system that we've never seen before that can do that.
I don't think so.
We're almost done, so we got to end. But I was going to think one last question. Do you believe in parallel universes? An unlimited amount of you. One got married. One was a man who had a baby. A birthing person. One was.
It could be related to the entanglement thing, where there's
like the multiverse theory.
I do not. The reason people are using multiverse theory, they're positing it to explain things they're seeing in the real world, right? In the same way that they saw rain come out of the sky and they say, well, maybe there's a dude up there pouring water out of the sky. They're reaching for something that they don't have the information to explain yet. And so they're reaching for these specious theories like string theory, like multiverse theory, to explain why, because like our laws of physics like actually are still incorrect. They get answers wrong and we don't know why. And the reason for that is because the law is just wrong. It's not because the law is correct and there's multiple universes and there's a guy and he pours the sand. It's not because of that. It's because your theory's wrong. You should admit it. Like our theory of gravity is wrong. It needs to be adjusted. That's why it gives the incorrect answer in certain situations. It's not because there's this secret matter that you can't see. It's dark matter and it's all over the universe. That's an explanatory thing to explain for the current time why it's wrong. Dark matter is not real. we're not going to discover it. Dark energy is not real. It's a concept used to explain why our stuff is messed up, why our laws don't work, right? Because otherwise you'd have to like create a law that works in all situations, and it's just you would have to know everything about everything. Then your law would be correct, but you're always going to have problems, and so they just use it to explain why all the laws are fucked up.
Okay, let's stop there because everybody's got to go. And so what I want to do is, thanks, Shawn. That was freaking awesome. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.